Hey, how's it going? Welcome. First little stream for Twitch, just testing it out. Let's see how it goes. With just two viewers. And so if you have any feedback based on how this looks and streams, please do let me know. I'm just trying to get a sense of it. Also, do let me know if you can actually even, well, if you can hear me, audio-wise. If you don't respond, I don't know, we'll see. I'll have to figure that out later on. Oh, great, thank you. Appreciate the quick feedback. Also gonna try to see how long I'm able to go on Twitch on something like this. I think there's a cap and a limit in terms of what I'm able to do at the moment, but we'll see. How's it going? Welcome. We just have a couple of people in here just testing out this platform for myself and seeing how well it'll work for what we're trying to do. So we'll just go for a bit and see what happens. I'm going to kind of stress test it a little bit based on things like feed, audio, smoothness of the video, even things like time, how long I'm able to go. Unless I have to upgrade to some sort of account, I'm not sure. We'll see. And if any of you guys use this platform more than I have, any advice also is welcome. The plan is to try to do this at least once a week, possibly on a Thursday or Friday, depending on one of those days. Today being a Thursday. Might as well give it a try. Good, it's good to hear. I got a new little setup in terms of having a light and a little cam holder for the phone. So hopefully those are helping. I was a little bit concerned about light last time. Every time I do the Instagram feeds, the light sources are never always the best. And the camera holder that I have is a little bit weird and cumbersome, so it's also another factor as to why I was going to try to test things today. Hi, welcome, Whimsies. Appreciate that, thank you. Just doing a little quick test feed of live drawing using this platform, which is normally for other stuff, but I think a lot of other artists are taking it to their advantage, and I'd like to give it a try and see how it feels. we'll slowly build this in terms of an audience. We'll see if people migrate over here. I mainly stuck to Instagram, mainly due to the fact that most of the people that tend to follow what I do are on there anyways. So, but I don't really like the format of Instagram. That vertical kind of format doesn't really work well for live drawing for artists because it crops in on the image a little bit too harshly in a way that's not necessarily best to format. So also, there was a lot of bugs. It wouldn't save any of my streams, and I didn't have access to it. So if I really wanted to repost it over again on like the Instagram TV kind of thing, I wasn't able to. So kind of moved away from that, and we'll see if we can use this better. But if anybody has any questions, comments, thoughts, pertaining to anything you guys want to discuss, you're welcome to ask. I'm here just to sketch, draw, relax, and talk to people. Yeah, I mean, I've used the Twitch platform for a major brand for people that were actually on here, doing their own kind of stream of education and kind of like almost like a podcast where they're talking to artists and stuff like that. So I was a guest from one of them, and it was a very nice experience because obviously they were the ones doing it. But it wasn't so personable. It was more like a channel for like a TV series in a kind of way. And yes, the people could engage with the artist, but obviously there was a middleman kind of engaging and talking to the people and choosing the questions and whatnot, where I think it's nice for the artist to also be able to choose the questions they want to talk about. But yeah, definitely I've always been interested in seeing where this will go for me. Anyways, hopefully everyone is having a relatively good evening, and you're welcome to ask, share, or interact with each other as much as you want to. I'll be playing around with things like camera angles, adjustments, all that kind of stuff. Right now, I'm also previewing it on the website itself on Twitch, and just kind of watching the stream as I'm also doing it live on my phone, just to kind of see how the format looks like, but also to see if the screen looks clear enough. Welcome everyone, and also Jeff, appreciate that. The book, it's Dynamic Bible, is still being produced. I'm running down to my last couple of copies in stock in my storage that's based out in Asia. And those particular copies are actually going to be called for by a gallery here in LA, which we'll be able to get through them potentially by, I would hope, maybe the end of the year. I am planning to do a reprint of the book also, just because, again, I'm down to my last few copies. And that's a book that I'll continue to, again, print more and more of, because I will be expanding on the book. But I do want this version of it to always be available, because it's supposed to give you the big picture as to how to approach a format, a method of drawing of this sort. So it will, if not available by end of the year through that gallery and bookstore, it will definitely be going to reprint, where I will sell most likely by myself. But like I said, other storefronts will then have more access to it when I have a lot more copies available. I'm hoping definitely by the beginning of the year that'll be the case. It's been a little difficult to keep that in stock due to the fact that it's kind of been left up to me to do all the work in terms of, like, the printing, the marketing, the distribution, taking the orders and all that kind of stuff. So even when I did actually have copies, it was kind of hard to post it on my storefront and have it for sale, because I'd have to go through the whole process of, taking down the orders and sending it out and all that kind of stuff. So I'd actually limit, how many would be available because of my time. But now that I can hopefully get it more in hands of gallery and storefronts and bookstores, they can do the brunt of the work for me and might make it easier. I'm just kind of drawing out a power suit. It's being worn by the guy, and I put a big kind of helmet form back over here. Looks like we're slowly getting in some people. Got 10 people in right now. I posted a story about it on Instagram. I'm not really quite sure how many people were going to be able to actually use Twitch. I'm assuming a lot of people actually do have an account. I've had it, never really used it. I don't really watch that much stuff on it. It might be the older side of me in terms of not wanting to explore it, but always known about it, never really actually got in there and saw what the content was. A lot of it is gaming, obviously, but especially on the art side, I should have really gone in there more. That's yeah. That I've actually heard about that, where Jim will do some live streams, and of course, he's an icon in the comics field. I've always wanted to see him actually draw more live. I've only seen him do it once at like a show and a convention, like San Diego. He's someone I'd actually really like to meet one day, also too. But it's interesting someone like him would have even the time to even do something like this remotely at all. But it's cool that he's done it. I'm sure there were many people watching that. Welcome, thank you for coming by. Even if you just stop by for a little bit and have any thoughts or feedback, I'd love to hear it. If anybody's here and just has additional thoughts as to things you would like to see or adjust on and what I can do to make things better, is welcome to hear. Again, I just asked real quickly on things like video and audio and format, how the angles look. Is it clear enough? Is it not clear enough? Should I shift it more above, or whatever the case is? Well, I think in terms of live streaming, it's just an opportunity to engage with more people that are out there. And I do a lot of engagement when it comes to things like education and classes internationally and domestically here in the US. And it's great. And I prefer the physical kind of like locations of being able to be centered and having people live there because I prefer to interact with people live in most situations. But, obviously I can't do it every single day and travel the world in every single month. And I did a lot of it extensively in the summer, and it was a lot of fun, but also very, obviously, it drains quite a bit, not just even financially, but also it can physically. So, having a bits of breaks in between are nice, but I still want to be able to actually give the opportunity to engage, but also in the fact that I just draw anyways. And I think it's another great way to continue to add more content and just kind of, obviously just share, but draw more attention to the things I'm trying to do. And I think, formatting videos and editing all that kind of stuff takes a lot of time. So when I can just do something live and where it's a bit more, kind of free and spontaneous, kind of like a moment where it's just, again, in a classroom situation or in a situation of like a gallery show or event where people can come watch and interact. I kind of feel like that's another great way to have people have another opportunity to talk with certain individuals or artists or whatever level of experience or I guess direction they have. That's what I wanted to give. But regardless of it, I also like to just do this anyways. I think it's just fun. A lot of artists don't necessarily want to do it because they don't like drawing live in front of people. Not only that, but they don't really necessarily want to talk at the same time. So they'll play like music in the background or something like that, and you don't really get to hear what they're thinking or what they're doing while they're doing it. So I think it's also a rare situation where not a lot of people have that skill set harness to a degree, where I can do this and also, think and talk and engage at the same time. And I think it's a skill set that's kind of been built over years and years and years doing it, especially with teaching. So if I have a skill set that I can offer that not a lot of artists will do regularly, even a number of them, I'm definitely going to offer that opportunity for people, but also give something unique of a content where it doesn't really exist. And I think in this world of social media and content, it's always offering something that takes a skill set that not a lot of people can do, and kind of, again, putting that at the forefront. Yeah, definitely. That was also the dilemma, was drawing traditionally too. And part of your question or the comment was, when it comes to like digital, projecting your screen using Photoshop, it's definitely a lot easier to be able to just kind of capture your desktop and project it, and then you can just kind of talk in the microphone or whatever the case is. It kind of frees you up and not having to like set up light and all that kind of thing. But I always tend to work traditionally when it comes to live streams because I just draw by hand mostly. Would I ever do digital stuff into the future? Potentially. Have I done that before? Actually, not really. A lot of my online classes from the past, and even right now, honestly, I still do a lot of online digital Photoshop demos and talks. But analog is not something that I would do with classes online. It would only be live streaming. So again, that's that slight unique content that's not necessarily offered even on an educational level. So I thought, that would be kind of something cool for people to have. Maybe it'll draw attention more. It gives me more opportunities to engage, but also to build that side of an audience where I can continue to really build the stuff I'm working on, and have you guys help along, or if I can help the other way around, I would definitely do so. So I'm just kind of seeing how long I'm going to be able to go on this, and I think right now at the moment it doesn't tell me time. I had to kind of figure out the UI on this thing too, see where the basic information and stuff is, getting access to it. Oh, absolutely. And whether it grows large or not, I think honestly, it probably is going to be a better platform for live streaming regardless. And I think I may be moving away from Instagram on that anyways. Because like I said, just Instagram was really buggy. It wasn't handling the live streams, in my opinion, smooth enough in terms of flow, in terms of quality, the pixelization and all that kind of stuff, and the quality of render from the video afterwards just wasn't holding up the way I would like to. And then of course not being able to even have actual videos saved where it would tell me I could, but I wouldn't actually have it, was quite a bit of an annoyance. Personally, right now, Instagram to me and Facebook are actually very, very broken apps and programs at the moment. They don't really run very smoothly, in my opinion. Like, it's great because it's my main platform. It's awesome to connect to people, but it's not very smooth. Images or videos don't get linked up very well on Facebook, or things that get shared on Instagram, or again, it's like the quality, or sometimes it's a hit and miss. It's nice for immediate sharing, and which is what it was for, but I think hasn't really adjusted well over time. So the only reason why people stick around is because of the amount of, let's say an audience they built up, or how much of time investment they built to kind of, getting that follower status, I guess, in a way. But yeah, it is a huge drawback. But again, Instagram really hasn't grown with times, honestly, in my opinion. They try to do things to mimic or imitate others that might be trying to like push things, but that's what it kind of feels like, and it doesn't really feel like its own thing, or really hasn't grown in a way that felt natural. So I don't know. It's interesting where it'll go in the next like 5 years, I would say. I mean, 5 years honestly is a long time for any kind of social media app, and it's been around for a bit. So that's why it's kind of like, it's kind of showing a bit of its fangs, growing long in the fangs, I guess. So people that tend to use social media, or you follow, or engage in certain ways, I think people are going to move on as audiences, but also people that are content creators. So I myself have to consider that, especially if I want to just continue to be able to have the proper platform to share the things I want to share. Great, thanks for the information, Sarah. Appreciate that. I will have to keep track of my battery because it's not plugged in right now, which I have to do so in the future. I'm fine right now, and I'll keep it going, and we'll just see how it goes. Yeah, I don't know much as to what Twitch really does offer. I've been a part of one show and live stream before, but again, I had no, actual technical control behind it. So I don't know anything in terms of like the UI screen feels like, or the feed, or things like that whole idea of time and how long it's supposed to go, or what I can and can't do. It even took me like 15 minutes just to figure out how to change my profile picture. And I figured out I couldn't actually do it on my phone. I had to do it on the actual desktop. But we'll see if there's even any kind of like spontaneous people that jump in that are not really following me on Instagram, but actually are able to discover through things like Twitch. I wonder if that will even work very well. Because Instagram right now is terrible when it comes to its algorithm. Like, not a lot of unique followers tend to build. It's slow growing nowadays. And I lose just as many followers as I gain, honestly, now. So it's hard to build. So many bots and so many fake profiles and all that kind of stuff. Again, not the best platform these days anymore, unfortunately, which is sad because, again, for a lot of people who have even much more followings but investments that really help with their business or their growth or their experience and being able to even engage with people in general socially is kind of rough. Yeah, this is an accordion sketchbook, Whimsies. As you'll notice, it does fold up like this, and you'll see the pages I can turn, but then I can also unravel it. And it's actually quite long. I don't remember exactly the length of it by feet, but it is quite extensive. This is the back side too right now. I'm actually drawing on the back end of it. This is the front. And this was a gift given to me by Hyunjin Kim, who runs the Super Rani group. That's part of the Kim Jung-gi. This is the front of the cover of the book. This is actually filled up one side already. But yeah, this is a sketchbook that was gifted to me. So the one side of it is now all completely filled up, and then I flipped it to the other side. And this paper is actually like a rice paper, so it's very absorbent. And watercolor is not that bad on it. The ink is pretty good, but it is very absorbent. It's like tissue paper in a lot of ways. I'm amazed it's actually held up in terms of its like, going in with the ink, because sometimes the fibers get picked up every now and again. I can't use fountain pens on this because it does bleed like crazy. But felt tip pens and brush pens also probably tend to work the best. So, and this is where I'm at currently. So this book is actually almost done. I only have this, and that's the end of the book. So it's literally the last strip of the piece. It's kind of interesting how they actually put this book together too. This is actually 2 sheets, as you'll see like in there, and it's been like glued together. Alright, let's keep this one going. But it is a nice benefit to be able to go as long as I need to with this one. The time limit on Instagram was actually also a good thing as well, because it kept me on track of time and also pacing. But we'll see if I will limit times in the future, or just have like really long episodes and every now and again. I'm actually labeling these as episodes anyways, and so that way I'll kind of categorize them almost like podcast episodes. People can go back and rewatch them again if they want to. So I just labeled this episode 1 for now. We'll see if I can even like categorize folders where I put videos in. That way, if I do demos of certain types, whether it's like ink or even things like watercolor or certain categories of themes, I can then kind of group them together so people can find the content they want to see. Yeah, we'll see. I honestly, what you just stated, I have no idea what that means. Sounds great. But I'm just here to talk to whoever shows up. It doesn't matter if it's large or small. I'm gonna be doing this anyways, so. There's a little mini guy instead of another mech, and he's sitting on a block. I might put some other stuff behind here. I thought of this as kind of like a power suit with another guy in kind of a smaller, tighter suit. Sometimes, you know, when I draw stuff like this, is there like a function to it? Not necessarily. Any kind of power suit is always thought about as like maybe it's military, maybe it's exploration or research, possibly protection or defense. But with designs like this, it's just also more about aesthetic. It just kind of looks cool. Oh, I see. Interesting. I'm really curious what this will look like once we end and it does go into the channel area. I'm always curious about things like quality. I'm always interested in things like how playback feels, or if I'm even able to like save it as an actual video file. If not, I don't know. Or if it's locked into the servers of Twitch. It's also interesting to see the numbers like rise and then fall, and people like jump in. It's almost like, again, watching TV. People will flip the channel, they get on there and they'll look at something like, oh, that's kind of cool, but then they'll go look for something else. It's fascinating. Jeff asks, remember you mentioning you'd have your own teaching platform next year. Anything you can share about that? Well, so the idea is upcoming in January, when we come off of the holiday break, I will be offering registration for my classes, which will all be online, and it'll be live classes online using Zoom as a meeting point. And I'll offer about 2 sections of the class of the dynamic sketching approach, which is a process of how to draw observationally, building confidence and effectiveness in quick sketching, building your eye to be able to break down simplicity in shape and form, and being able to draw many things through the use of this method of breakdown primitive shapes. Each course will probably run about 8 weeks, I would say, much like similar to a CGMA course would be. The pricing will be either competitive to either same or actually a little bit lower. I'm only offering about 15 seats per class of the dynamic sketching, but I will also be offering a mentorship program in 2 varying degrees. One will be a kind of a larger grouping. We'll have about maybe 10 max. I'm thinking maybe 5 to 10 people, which will be like a mentorship class where people can engage and talk about the things or ask questions of design or drawing or whatever they feel is interesting to them. But again, it's a group of people. But I'll also be offering one-on-ones where it's a mentorship, literally just one person. And that will be done through like interview process. I have to make sure I want to work with the person that's interested. And it's more of a bit of a premium because, again, it's literally one-on-one with the individual. How those tend to work is that if it is one-on-one, I offer, let's say, a couple hours, maybe up to 3 hours in the week to work with you for upwards of about 10 weeks. And we get to work on anything of your interest based on mileage or based on things like design or portfolio building, whatever the case is. The mentorship grouping would offer like 1 hour per person in that week. It's very similar to how my mentorship at Brainstorm is going to be submitted to, but like I said, I'll be the one managing a group and running all that stuff. It just gives people more opportunities to have a chance to work with me if they would want. Pricing wise, again, it will be adjusted because I'm running the platform myself. It's probably going to be on the slightly lower end compared to like Brainstorm. Brainstorm is a school that's based out here in Burbank, California. But like I said, we'll see where it goes from there. But I will definitely be registering people for the classes by January, and they will start at the end of January, at the beginning of February. In terms of dynamic sketching classes, we'll meet once a week live online through Zoom. And they will be recorded, and those recordings will be then saved. I'll try to figure that out, and then hopefully post those links up where people can then have copies of those things. But like I said, I'm kind of stepping away from some of the formatted platforms that are available, like these schools. It's not because I don't think they're doing a good job. It's because mostly on scheduling. I tend to travel a lot more these days, so when I'm traveling, it's really hard to adjust the schedule because I have to go through all these middle people. And so if I need to change the class like in the immediacy of things, it's almost impossible. So if I can just have my own class, I can do that on the fly. But then there's also like the financial freedom because honestly, these schools make a lot of money off of me, and I only really see a fraction of what that is. Sometimes some schools pay better than others, but sometimes they don't. Even like some of the colleges, like Art Center, don't really pay that well. So I'm looking for a bit of that security on that side a bit now because the amount of teaching years and hours I've done is enough to garner the focus, but also the I guess the separation between those areas. I don't need a school or a platform or like this formatted place anymore. I can do everything myself because I know how to run the things. Um, and it again shows that I have the experience to be able to actually even guide a class and to run people and people to show people that I can manage all these things on my own. So yeah, those are a lot of the reasons of why I'm doing it. I think it's just time at this point. A lot of artists these days are now kind of also moving away from these kind of big schools or universities or online places and kind of running their own platforms anyways. It's just the time, of in this day and age, it's just all about now control of your content, the branding, and all that kind of stuff. So anything I do with CGMA or CDA or any of these schools, the content I would create for them doesn't belong to me anymore. So uh, that can be troubling. Yeah, again, I'm also an instructor that's been traveling extensively in the last 3 or 4 years, and there are many artists that will do it too, and there are some instructors that also as well, but not that many that kind of dedicate to one or the other. Like for instance, there are a lot of artists that will travel and do festivals, like let's say the Unicorn event, the THU in Malta, or any one of these outs internationally. But not all of them are teachers. And some of the teachers that do that are not necessarily like, strong professional people. So hopefully I can kind of bring a blend of it together. Well, the thing about the classes I teach when it comes to sketching and drawing is that it's not formatted to people that need to be professionals or need to have the sense of confidence already yet. We're trying to build that. So it is a foundational class. It does require, having obviously a drive. And of course, even having a little bit of fundamental does help quite a bit. It will help you in terms of absorbing that information quicker. But that doesn't mean that people who don't have any experience at all can't learn something. And I've had people come from all walks of life and different age ranges and different countries and cultures, and everyone is able to walk away with something, uh, either by showing strengths, definitely showing weaknesses, giving a direction as to where you would go next, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's the kind of idea as to how the class feels for people. Oh, we're working it. Let's get to a different section. Let's go over here. Let's build another structure form. But anyways, for those of you that have stuck around and watched a little bit, appreciate that. For those of you that will be moving on at some point in the future, hopefully I will see you guys again. But regardless, you're welcome to hang out and ask more questions and engage as much as you would like to. Appreciate that. Thank you again. Question from Sarah is, how long did it take for you to get to the point where you were confident enough in your artwork to take on commissions? Well, in terms of that aspect of it, commission work can be kind of seen as a couple ways. One, a commission can be done through live, where you're at a show, convention, like a Comic Con or something like that, or expo. And those kind of commissions are the only ones I really do. Now, I know that people also make a business out of it, and they'll take commissions, through orders online. They'll use their social media platforms and that kind of stuff. I don't really do that. But in terms of just like knowing when, I felt like I could actually take on commissions in person when I actually did do them. Well, the fact of the matter is that there was no point in time where I felt like right then I knew exactly what I was going to do or how I was going to do it, where I felt confident enough to do it. A lot of it's a slow build. It just kind of happens over time, incrementally, bit by bit, by just attempting and trying things. Sometimes it begins by even just having a friend ask you, and they'll be like, "Hey, by the way, like I really love your work, and I've always wanted to have something from you." Maybe they're closer in friends, and then they kind of want to always have a copy of something that you've had, family, friend, whatever the case is, and so you might do something for them. And obviously, I've done a lot of drawings for family, like my nephews and stuff like that. They won't have sketches, but again, way beforehand, even as a student, whether it's co-workers or fellow students that were in colleges with me, then we'd share work with each other. Not to say we would sell it sometimes either. We sometimes would just do it because we would do it for as friends, and I think that's the starting steps in building a sense of like what it is or what it takes to produce work and work that's yours, where people come back and be like, oh, I love this piece and I love that, and they want to have a copy. Where if you make a print, they want to have a copy of that too. So it doesn't really engage with money in the beginning, but it definitely engages with interest, like if people are even interested at all. And from there, I think it kind of stimulates the curiosity of whether or not you can actually turn it into something you can sell. That I think is the hardest transition, is like knowing what you're valued at, what you're worth. And many artists, of course, tend to undervalue themselves because you feel bad, you feel guilty when you're like, oh, I don't want to overcharge people. But that business side is where artists are the weakest at, because that's the way they think. They don't think of their stuff as something that you can charge to, not necessarily like super high or taking advantage of people, but the fact of the matter is that you're putting effort and time and energy and experience into it. So but that I think is a part of my growth is when you start to engage with close friends or family or whatever the case is. But actually, I'll even tell you a story of how I think it might even begin with this. It's kind of a funny story. It's one I don't really tell all the time. A lot of times I even just kind of forget about it, but then I would start to remember, it's like, oh my god, I forgot I had done this kind of stuff. This is like back in like the 6th grade maybe. Yeah, 6th or 7th grade. And obviously I must have been, I don't know, what, 11, 12, possibly. So, once I get to what, 8th grade, 9th grade, you're probably around 13, 14. So I must have been 11 or 12 around that time. And what I did in the 6th and 7th grade is I had this like Marvel like art book. It was like a Marvel character book, and they're all like just illustrations that other artists have done. It was like it's literally a collaboration of many artists, and it's an art collection. And it was from like the 90s, okay, like the 1990s. And I would take that book around, and I would shop it out. I would actually show it to students, like, hey, is there like a character you like, and that kind of stuff. And I remember I would charge kids if they wanted a sketch or drawing of one of those pieces, and I would draw that image as closely as I could, and I would sell it. And so it's like it's kind of weird to say, but I was like the Marvel pimp. And these were characters that I actually literally had. I would pimp them out and be like, what character you want? And I'll draw it for you and sell it to you. And I did this for like a year, I remember. And I don't think I ever got caught. And I wasn't drawing anything lewd. But I was drawing the characters out, and people and kids would be like, oh, draw me this character, draw me that character. And they go through the book and flip through it and be like, I want this image. And I was like charging like $1, But I literally did do this. I actually rebought that magazine book recently because I obviously lost it over many years. But I remember this, like, oh God, it was sometime earlier this year too. And I just kind of remembered it again. But I actually went back on eBay to look for a copy of that book again because it was such a memorable thing, a nostalgic thing. And I had to buy a copy of that book again. I can't remember where I put it actually, but it's somewhere here. And every time I think back on that, it's like, man, that's kind of funny. It's funny that, yeah, I'm pretty sure Proko may have done something similar too. That guy's a businessman. That guy's an entrepreneur. He's a good artist, obviously too, but the guy knows how to build stuff in terms of the branding and the business side of things. He knows how to package stuff well. And he certainly knows who to work with. Guys like Marshall are amazing. He's done like stuff with interviews with Kim Jong Un and Carl Kapinski, all those guys. And yeah, of course. But there's never a bad time to start and stuff like that. I think a lot of it is just, is there an opportunity? And if there is, don't let it slide by. Give it a try. And more than likely, no matter what you produce, honestly, people will like it. Actually, you might think, "Oh, this is a terrible drawing," and as soon as you show it to them, they're like, "Oh, they love it." It makes you feel better. And it's just because you overthink. I'm going to try to move the camera a little bit, inwardsy a little bit more, to get a nice overhead shot, because I feel like the angle is a bit slanted too much. So I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit. And then I'll of course move the sketchbook if I need to, because I kind of want it a bit more of a top down. I'll find the angle eventually that I want. Oh yeah, what Proco does by going to like Comic Con and different conventions and asking a bunch of pros about their advice and recommendations and stuff like that. Yeah, it's definitely a great series. Definitely insightful for a lot of artists. Especially what they share. I always kind of feel not necessarily awkward. I like doing it, but I always kind of question and ponder. It's like, man, should I continue doing this? Because sometimes I feel like a lot of my answers I end up just repeating again. Because I have very formulated methods of how I reply to things, and I use a lot of similar examples of stuff that I've talked about before. And so I kind of always question like, man, I hope people aren't getting like bored by answers I produce. Well, I'm sure other people feel the same way, but. A question from 24 is, what do you think of the 3D arts or the 3 ArtStation published art books? I don't think I've actually even seen them, honestly. I may have, but I just didn't realize ArtStation was the one that published it. I knew ArtStation was doing things like online classes, but I didn't, to be honest with you, I didn't realize ArtStation actually did even books. Maybe you can actually hit me up a link and share it with me. I'm not really quite sure what the books are. I may have seen them. I just didn't realize where they were from. In terms of the pen I'm using, Sarah, it is the Pigma FB Sakura brand. FB is the fine brush, and this is the only pen this day and age I actually will buy now, because I buy through so many plastic pens and I don't buy them anymore. Things like the fine liners of Copics or the Faber-Castell, Stellars. I don't buy those kind of pens anymore, even though I use them for classes and I'll demo with them, but I don't necessarily use them for personal use. This is the only one I'll actually buy off the shelf. Question from Lost for Days is, do you ever have a moment in time where you doubted your own artistic capabilities, perhaps setting too high expectations? And I think that does apply at a certain point in time in my life, especially earlier on. And I think all students, and as artists as well too, will understand that. And you might be going through it right now, where as you're training, that wall hits you a little bit. We're just like, am I actually good enough to start working? Am I good enough to start transitioning to the professional field compared to all these other artists that are out there? And as you even start working in the very beginning, you obviously have those questions, and that feeling does remain. even through years of experience, and you start getting on a new job, that question of, am I actually really good enough to even do this job? Why are they even hiring me? That even that what is that kind of feeling you have, the imposter syndrome kind of feeling, right? Where you're not really quite sure what you're doing is true. Like you're kind of putting off this notion that you're in this position to do things you're trying to do, but really you're not capable of doing it, and somehow you're just kind of sliding by. Yeah, those are common thoughts and traits that many people have. And I have had them. And to this day, even if I got like a contract job or a gig I was working on, and it was a really big project, would I probably feel that way? To be honest with you, I probably would. And it's not the fact that I'm not feeling confident in my own work, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that when you're on a project, you have the pressure of people expecting stuff from you. So it's not expectation from myself, but it's the mentality of like other people are now expecting something from you. So that kind of thought does, kind of drive into your brain and sticks there a little bit, and it makes you wonder. It's like, oh man, can I actually do this? And then as you get the ball rolling and you start submitting work and they respond to it, it kind of settles the mind, but not always. This last contract job that I worked on was for a game studio. Can't say where, but it was like about a week long gig doing character design work. And as I was working on it, I always kind of thought to myself, do they even like it? Like, is it good enough? And those were my thoughts. It's like, even though I was producing it, they didn't even mention anything. They're just like, yeah, that's great, keep going, all that kind of stuff. But even still, my mind was going to the place of like, I don't know, is it still good enough? So what do you do then in that situation? Well, it's not really ever going to go away. And what has to happen is that you just have to accept the fact that that's how you're going to feel. But it's not a bad feeling, because what it really does is it really drives you to complete the work, because to push. Now, many people will fold and shy away from it, or get so stressed and intimidated that actually run away from this. But you actually have to find a way to make it make it a positive thing, where you're using it as a form of energy to continue the push to finish the work. Okay, maybe it's not the way you want it to be, or maybe even the feedback eventually turns out like, we need to adjust this, make that better. You might feel bad about it, but still, those kinds of experiences will always be there to a certain degree. But you have to accept the fact that it's always going to be like that. And once you do, which is a very hard thing to do, by the way, you're able to move forward a lot better. And not have this like regretting mentality, like, oh, I wish I did this better and that better. You don't feel bad about it. You're able to be more communicative to the people that you're working with, and ask the questions downright. It's like, hey, what do you want to see? How do we push this more? Instead of you being afraid to ask and being like, I'm not really quite sure if I'm doing this right or wrong, and you start to hesitate. That's a huge problem, But once you embrace it, then you're going to be a full-fledged, like going to be able to open up to be just ask questions and wonder, but also present that. It's like, hey, I don't know if that's what you guys really want. How can we adjust this? Give me more feedback. Give me more thoughts. And not to say that you're looking for something negative, but you're looking for ways to build from. And so you feel more confident to be able to go and approach them and be like, I'm not sure exactly where this is going for me right now, and I need more information. So that's a part of that, So I guess down to make it simple of an answer for you, yes, I definitely have had some doubts within art in a professional field. Personally, not so much, because if it's just my own stuff, I just enjoy doing it. It's more when other people expect something now. That's good to hear, Sarah, that you had that feeling, but you were able to actually manage to push through. And that's a part of your growth and realization that you are able to do it, and it builds the confidence. And you'll always have those feelings again at some point, but the memory of what you had beforehand will help you go through it again. Question from George is, how formed are these designs in my head before you start versus just going with the flow? If I was working on a client work, like someone else's piece or project, I would do a lot more preliminary, like thumbnailing, design work, processing, shape language exercises, or even just, research and heavy amount of image collection to show to the person. In this situation, a lot of this is just kind of on the fly, and I'm adapting to it, but I'm also pulling a lot from previous memory and experiences to kind of twist things, push things in different ways, adjust proportion, overlapping shapes, using different kinds of shapes. But there's not as much like thought process based on like function as to like what these designs are. So I'm able to then move freer and just create whatever I want because there is no expectation here. There is no purpose behind what it's going to be used for besides just an exercise of just sketching and drawing. So it definitely kind of works in that separation. In this situation here, it's just me practicing drawing mechanical structures of armor sets and forms and familiar structures too. A lot of the smaller bits and pieces are things I would use many times over again. Joint areas, movement, articulation, that kind of stuff. But the bigger panels are areas where I can manipulate and move a lot easier. Thanks for the back on the blacksmith. It's currently in the mode of like I'm waiting for the Kickstarter to send me the money, and as soon as it does, I will be sending the book file over to the printer to have them get started, and hopefully it'll get done. Printing wise, I would say I'm thinking December, and I'm hoping to get it shipped out by early next year. I think what I stated in the rewards was like February or March or something like that. But I'm sure the book will get finished sooner. But once it gets done, they have to ship it and all that kind of stuff, and it takes time. So, but yeah, soon enough. You won't have to wait a year. I can tell you that. Oh, there was the link for the books. Yeah. Oh, interesting. I've seen a couple of these. The one with the Jacob Rosowski, I've seen that book before. I haven't seen the Project 77. And Nivan, I know because I've met him at the festival in Poland when I was doing the Promise Land event. So I've met him there. He's a cool, really cool guy. I've heard of this book, but I didn't know ArtStation actually did it. I thought it was his own self-publishing, which is very interesting. So they have the proper artists in terms of like, you know, getting some nice book collections together. And Devon's a great mech designer and really cool guy. But in terms of the quality of the book, I haven't really seen the interior. I just know about the content, and the content should be pretty solid. But in terms of book design, I don't have any opinion about it. In terms of the printing process of the comic and the books, I don't necessarily get to see it in person because they're based in Asia. But they will send me proofs. So they send me proof of the books to kind of make sure like the color and everything is okay, binding is okay, and then once I approve everything, we go to final print. And they'll even send me pictures like off the press. What's the most recent thing you learned regarding art? The learning doesn't necessarily happen technically anymore that much. It can, but it's few and far in between. And a lot of it is very minimal progressions of things. There's no really big aha moments anymore. I think when you're younger as a student, you'll have those at the very start of it. You'll take a class and be like, oh my gosh, like this whole big thing. But right now, after like 20 years, I'll pick up small bits, really small bits. And it can be very minor. And the small bits could be things like, you know, how I approached one shape compared to another on, you know, a structure of, let's say, building an animal, you know. It could be about a shortcut of how I would like construct something. And so it can be stuff like that. And in recent, it wouldn't even sometimes be technical. It would be even more based on a working method on projects of like books or campaigns, or even like on a business level of things, is what I would learn more of. So the Kickstarter, again, I've done several and I've had all of them succeed. This one I learned more of like what I should have done more and what I shouldn't have done. Even things like the whole like shipping internationally was a big trouble for me because I, in my mindset, thought I had to like figure out how to, you know, ship all that myself. I hired someone to do all the fulfillment, but I didn't realize what they could and could not do. Especially when it came to like drawing in or signing books, I kind of felt like I had to limit it because I thought it was going to be really too tough to ship online. Well, internationally that is, but it actually wasn't going to be that tough. And I kicked myself and like, man, I could have offered many more options for people internationally, but I wasn't able to because I started the campaign. So the next time I do something like this, which I will do another Kickstarter for the Blacksmith 2 by end of next year, I will definitely make that more open for people to pick up stuff. So question from George again is, I have a very heavy hand. Any tips other than more practice and don't do that? Maybe I need a grip change. No, the grip doesn't make a difference in terms of like how you hold the pen. I've had literally had students hold the grip and pen like this and draw. Okay, I've had students, hold the pen like this and draw, literally, and they draw well because that's their comfortable grip. Um, Grip then is not about how you hold the pen, but all about maybe pressure, how tightly you're gripping the pen. So yes, loosening your grip is very important. For me, when I hold the pen, it's sitting on top of my middle finger, and I'm putting the pressure to the sides of the pen using my thumb and index finger. So I'm squeezing to the sides of it. It's resting on my middle finger, but there's a definite impression, but that just happens just from holding the pen there over time. But the pressure is being pressed laterally like this. Distance is also then important. I'll usually hold the pen at a distance like that so that I don't press as hard and there isn't as much leverage. So I definitely will hold it like this in the beginning. I will then hold it closer to the edge if I want tighter control of things, but I always start at a distance of the pen. From there, if you notice that you're still gripping very tightly, and if you can't loosen the grip, my suggestion is to get something that goes around the pen, like a little foam material, and you can make those yourself, and just wrap it around the pen and grip that, and so that we have more surface material to hold on to, and it makes it less pressure for your hand. It also eases the pressure of the pen, so you can do stuff like that. I'm going to adjust the lighting just a little bit. I feel like it's kind of blowing out the image. We'll see if that makes a difference. I'm gonna put another one over here. Let me adjust the sketchbook. Just kind of shifting it over just slightly. When was the last time you used a pencil graphite to draw something? Very recently. I actually really love drawing with graphite and pencil. And of course, during our art center times and college days, we would do a lot of pencil renderings. To practice rendering in general, we would use a lot of graphite because we can get a lot of subtlety and gradients, all that kind of stuff. And so pencil was the ideal situation there. Charcoal was a big thing that we would use for figure drawing, but I also just love pencil drawing in general because of the line you can produce, and I wouldn't necessarily smudge with it too much. I do a lot of line work, but it's usually a decision that I would make before I do the drawing. So I would intend to use pencil or graphite from the very beginning. So it's not like I'm using pencil to do an underlay sketch to put pen on top. It's a pencil sketch because it's supposed to be a pencil sketch, and I use ink because it's supposed to be ink drawing. Now, I am not against people using pencil to do like underlays because I did do stuff like that as a student and it's totally fine. Today, though, obviously, I don't need to do that in the first place. So for me, it's just another waste of materials, but also a waste of time, honestly, to go in there and do something in pencil that I don't need to. Now, of course, the argument could be, but couldn't you make a cleaner drawing doing something like that? Absolutely. And so if I was producing a more final piece, an actual illustration that's being put up for marketing or a poster or gallery work, would I do something like that? If I feel the need that I need control of the image and want to do a pencil sketch underneath it, I would definitely do so. I would not shy away from that because if the piece calls for it, right? Again, intention is very important. Then obviously it makes sense. But if I'm using it as a crutch and because it limits my ability to freely express, then that's a problem. Because I want to build confidence, I want to commit to the drawing. And sometimes with pencil, what people are using it for is to backtrack by erasing or to lightly feather things in and slowly build the drawing. And so there's no real commitment then and confidence because you know that you can always kind of undo it to a degree or lightly place it in and slowly build it over time. But again, I'm also looking for not just confidence but efficiency. And so it's a combination of many things like that, essentially. But again, pencil is a great material. So is things like ballpoint. So is digital. But it's all based on what it is you're working on, what it calls for, and how you're going to go about doing it to produce the actual piece you need to, and what you're hired to do in the first place. Again, I don't really consider myself that much of an artist to a degree. Maybe this day and age now, it's like I do a lot of stuff that's more art related for illustration, but I was definitely more coming from a background in design, which requires more thinking. In terms of processes and branding or whatever the case is. Where illustration was my background too, but the way I do think is very different than an illustrator. Yeah, I think the whole drawing with intention thing is it's always been there for me, but I've never really communicated it with the level of I guess intensity and also amount of time that I've done in the recent last year, where it's become a very primary focus of my talks and also discussions and lectures, where a lot of it was always kind of implied that it was always there, but it was never really described down to why, or how. So in these days, and when I do classes, I tend to talk about that much, much more. Um, but again, it's more based on just experience, and I'm sure many artists don't always agree with it, or may not even consider it. I don't know. But I think it's quite important. So I've done a good amount right now, and I just have this last bit, which I might actually just kind of fill out. I might just finish this book here, honestly. I've got the good momentum, and I might just continue to focus it with what our theme is at the moment. What I also have to find out for this Twitch stream is like when the best time would be to do it in, because we have so many people coming from different time zones and such like that. I might just alternate. Maybe I'll do some during the day. I'll do some other times in the evening. I usually just kind of tend to do it when I'm free, and I just kind of hop on and just go for it. But I think having a schedule will definitely have people know when to hop on. I usually prefer evening, mainly because I'm home and I just draw at night. Daytime, I'm usually kind of around doing errands or doing personal work or something like that, traveling. So like, that's why most of my live streams are coming out like in the evening times in the West Coast. Yeah, I think it's a good idea too, Whimsies. Yeah, and that's fine too, Sarah. I mean, again, it's like if you favor a certain material and you kind of like find comfort in it and also a working method, that's great, honestly. But again, there's certain things that happen when it comes to certain materials, especially with pencil and ballpoint. That does happen based on your growing and progression and mileage, which is, for me, it's that side of non-committal approach to drawing and sketching where there's no confidence really being built. But again, it does offer a lot of benefits, but there's also a lot of drawbacks. And I'm not saying that pen is like the best material ever either. Ink has a lot of drawbacks as well. You can't get the subtlety of line that you could obviously with pencil. But like I said, that's where you choose the directions of what materials you use based on what you're working on. Hey, how's it going, Demdai? It is the very first stream. We've been going at it for now, I think. Not really quite sure. There's no time, actually, still. So I don't know exactly how long we've been going. But I plan to just keep going until I finish this book, actually. So I started with this piece here, kind of worked my way around down to here, this direction. I'm going to keep going this way. I might draw something else. We'll see. I might draw something more with this kind of mechanical form. Or this idea of it. I kind of have a thought already right now as to what I'm going to do. Something mechanical. But I always like the idea of pilots and people working on mechs and stuff like that. But in any case, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. Let me adjust a couple things on music. So the idea is that I will probably plan to stream every Thursday regularly, or Friday if I miss a Thursday. And it'll be, I think the idea is that I'm going to try to alternate times, where I'll do some that happen in the daytime, others where I'll do in the evenings. It'll just alternate, just to give people a chance to kind of in different time zones to watch certain times. But we'll see how it goes. I'll adjust and I'll hone in on exactly what works for me as I do this. Oh, great. Thanks for the update. I'm pretty sure there's some way I can actually have that information on here for myself. But yeah. And I'm probably going to do an announcement on stories of Instagram that I will be, most likely will be, stop live streaming on Instagram, and mostly, and we'll be doing it on all of it on Twitch now. Yeah, I'll definitely look into it more and find out that information. Okay, we're gonna move on to a different section right down over here. I'm gonna alternate the camera. I'm not gonna continue with this perspective and this angle. I'm gonna draw something else over here, which is a continuation of this kind of image, but not a direct tie. It's not using the same space and angle, but we're gonna draw something else. Actually, close up this book on this end over to my left. And let me check my battery real quickly. We're good. Alright. I like the idea of having the perspective kind of being this slight fisheye, going this direction, going that direction. So let's put this indicator mark. These indicators, these lines right here, are my method of constructing. So this is me telling me where my horizon line is. Sometimes I'll do it, I'm just showing it to people. A lot of times I won't. But I'm just doing it here to kind of have a note by saying this is my horizon line. Question from Madeira is, do you recommend to start working on a personal project right away as a beginner or completely focus on fundamentals? It's a combination of both. If you have interest in developing something, do it. Why not? But if you're concerned like, oh, but I'm not good enough yet, well, what does that matter? Is it fun? When I was a kid in high school and even before high school, I used to do that all the time. I would make my own little comics. I would draw with my friends. We would make up ideas. We'd create characters and worlds. It wasn't like a full-on project per se. You know, it's not like I'm sitting there kind of formulating a whole design process. We would just sit down and draw, just have a notebook and just tell stories. I remember doing that with my friend, you know, this is up in Washington. This is me back in like 7th grade. And we loved the Star Wars universe, you know, and so we would like develop our own kind of designs of the Star Wars world too. You think, oh, we had this character or that character, and I would like draw weapons out. Like we could try create this kind of weapon or that kind of thing, and we would just play around. And as I get to high school, you know, I would find more friends that would like to draw with me, and we'd do more of that kind of stuff. We would just kind of play around with worlds and ideas and visuals, either based on something or just create our own original versions of stuff. So it's a combination. Continue doing the fundamentals because it'll reinforce the projects and the ideas and the playfulness and whatever the stories you're developing. And also then vice versa, because the question about fundamental is, as you strengthen it, is are you able to use it? You know, and the only way to use it is to use it by creating actual things for yourself. But yeah, that kind of stuff is, I think, naturally as artists, you're gonna do anyways. Not really much of an advice, but more just maybe even confirmation of stuff you've already been doing. And that's honestly what I'm still really doing in the first place. You know, any of the books that I create or publish or write or design that I end up making into something that people can potentially, you know, buy, it's still at the end of the day what I did before as a kid. You know, it's like just make up worlds and tell stories. And that is what our jobs are, really, at the end of the day, being storytellers to a degree. A lot of this tech detail is all just random stuff and just kind of going with the flow, going from shape to shape. There's no real um, engineering or functionality in some of these areas. Some parts do, in terms of just simple notions of like, oh, there's a joint, or there's a rotation, or there's articulation. I might think about that, but a lot of this stuff is also just kind of made up. That's another good way to go about it too, because a project can show you your weaknesses and strengths. But yeah, I mean that's definitely a certain approach as to what it's going to be used for. As I start to go down this direction, the perspective is going to change, and there's going to be a ground plane over here. So here was that horizon line mark, and so the ground plane perspective would be here, and it'll kind of warp and turn this direction. Or up here, it's going to be kind of like that. And it'll turn this direction over here, like this. And I'm going to put a guy right here in the corner. How's it going, man? Welcome. If anybody else is joining and is coming in for the first time, this is the very first stream on Twitch, and just testing it out, stressing it a little bit in terms of the time and the use of it, and seeing how well it goes for me. And so if anybody has any questions, comments, thoughts, you're more than welcome to ask at any time. Have I heard of, checked out the online drawing course Drawbox? If so, what do I think? Well, he was a student of mine. And so he asked me for permission if he was allowed to do Drawbox. And he started it on Reddit. And I said yes. As long as you make it your own thing and you give credit to where credit is due, do it. Have fun with it. Make it yours. And so I was, obviously glad that he did approach me and not just didn't do it on his own without really even asking. Because when I took this class on, I asked my mentor, can I take it and teach it somewhere else? And he said I could. So I give credit always to my teacher too. So yes, Drawbox is all the fundamentals of the methods of drawing from my class. But formatted in a way where he's taken it on his own now. So I'm glad it's been helping others, and I'm hoping he's been successful at it. I hope he's gaining to a degree and continuing on, helping others. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. There's a guy working on this mech piece. He's like pulling out dirt or maybe scoring damage, or maybe just filled with leaves. It's an old one. It's been kind of hanging out in a garage. He's like pulling out stuff. So here's that perspective warp going this direction. So the line goes this way, this way, this way, this way. And then above also goes this direction, this direction, this direction. There's that horizon line mark. I'm glad to hear that's worked out well for you. Yeah, that to be honest with you, I can't remember the name of the guy who actually started it. I'm sure when I hear it again, I would know, but off the top of my head, can't remember. It was years and years ago. But no, he came to me and said, I want to just be able to share this stuff online and format my own classes. And he had it on that Reddit channel for a while, and then opened up his own website. But again, if you go back there, he still gives credit to where it came from, all that kind of stuff. So as long as he's doing that, I'm fine with it. And at the end of it, eventually, if he doesn't, to be honest with you, I don't care. Like anything, eventually it's supposed to be handed down, and it doesn't become yours anymore. This idea of ownership of something obviously is important, but at the same time, it's like, what do you do? And you gotta make it, be its own thing. Like anything, it can be an organic creature of its own, where it'll grow and germinate and take a life of its own. Appreciate that, man. Thank you. Let's put some more stuff around it before I do any kind of like detail and line work. Let's put one. Put like stuff in the background a little bit. Okay, yeah. I don't. To be honest with you, I can't remember his real name either. Biggie, in terms of scheduling, I am planning to do schedule where every Thursday I will be on, and most likely on the evening time for the moment, Pacific evening time around. What time is it right now? 10. So I'm thinking like 7, 8, maybe around 9 at the latest. Today was just a kind of a test, kind of see how things go. And if it doesn't happen on Thursday, it'll always happen either on a Thursday or Friday. Maybe this is some kind of hydraulic room. Not hydraulic. I'm not a hydraulic room. I'm thinking of a clean room, dust room. Trying to free eye that perspective is always tough. No matter how much practice you do, it's one of those things you don't always get perfect every single time unless you're planning it, kind of constructing it. But once you build it enough and you start to be able to understand where things go, things come together a bit faster or more confidently, and you're able to lock it in. The hard part for me is like dressing up things, like setting up, like a set dressing. Thinking of things that exist in that location or space. I'd imagine now light fixtures up here. Appreciate that, Sarah. Thank you again, and thanks for stopping by. Always. What do you mean by a lot? Sometimes, Biggie. I'm actually curious about that. Again, I don't really use Twitch, honestly. I've never really explored it or watched that much on it. I've been a part of it once with like an art festival kind of thing, but obviously this is my very first one. But what does that mean? Is it like in the actual platform? Is it in the people? Right, this one's pretty much well built out. I'm gonna go back in and start to kind of hammer away at this inside area, bring a focal point in. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. I'm just not a part of that gaming community as much as I used to be anymore. To be honest with you, actually, when I used to play a lot of games, I never really played online. It's like I still remember the game that really started the whole thing, which was the first-person shooters, Call of Duty. Um, there was online gaming, obviously a lot on consoles and stuff, but I felt like Call of Duty was kind of the big part of that push. Um, PC obviously had those channels and all that stuff already set up, but for online consoles, didn't really pick up until maybe the mid 2000s, I would say. The very first game I actually played online a lot was on the PlayStation 2. It was actually on the SOCOM games. I used to play that quite often. This is back in like uh, early 2000, in 2001. And I played that quite a bit on a very crappy internet, connection too, and it still worked. But after a while, it's like I didn't really play much online because I just couldn't keep up. I wasn't just good enough, and so I was so focused on more story, anyways, and I played more single player games. And as it went more that direction, I just kind of like, lost interest in the area. Oh yeah, Death Stranding. The art does look amazing. Obviously, the Yoji Shinkawa being the art director and concept designer for it. It's weird as hell, and I still don't really know what that is. But from the reviews, people are kind of like panning it a little bit based on some of the gameplay. But honestly, I don't really listen to that many reviewers at all. So I love Kojima's style of storytelling. So every Metal Gear series and pieces of game I've ever played, I've always loved, no matter the criticism. So I'm pretty sure I'll feel the same with Death Stranding. So definitely those kinds of games that require more exploration, that kind of stuff. Like Red Dead Redemption was awesome as a story and a single player. Didn't really play the online part of it, but I love those kinds of games where you explore. Yeah, it's really out there. It's those Japanese. All right, let's get back into these midsection here and start to push some darks now. I want to even get some of that line weight pushed a bit heavy around this thing. So I'm just kind of doing mark making right now for some internal areas, spots of darks, shadow play, grouping together some tech details. So it gives you the impression of something very complex, where in reality it's not. And some of the busyness that would be there is hopefully going to be kind of grouped together and made easier to view and more clear based on what might be going on and some of the information inside. Actually, this is going to be the very last piece in the sketchbook because this is the backboard of the sketch. So once I finish this one, I'm probably going to end the stream. So we're probably going to go for maybe another 15 minutes because it's not going to take me that much longer to kind of wrap this one up. But if anybody does have any last questions, comments, thoughts, even feedback, I would love to hear it. Well, in a way, you can. Watching is a huge part of learning, and for me, it was. I learned a lot by watching. It may not be everyone's approach and how they kind of absorb information, but visual stuff, yeah, you can pick up on things. I'm pretty sure. Now I know that you're kind of just commenting, but I know I'm being serious about that. It's like watching, you know, someone do something. I think is a great way to learn. But now it's about knowing what to look for. You know. Yeah, hopefully I can stay consistent with it, and I think that's going to be the key thing is just to be on every week. It's the only way to make things work. Is anything you begin, you gotta just stick with it a little bit, and that consistency will show that people can actually come by. Because if you're not consistent, you don't show up, then people are like, oh, what's the point then? I mean, there's so many artists out there that are amazing. People that I know, people that I follow, and they have all like things like Patreons and Gumroads, and they'll do Twitch streams and Instagram, and a lot of them just kind of fall off. They don't stay consistent, and that's I think the one thing that puts a nailhead uh, into their growth. And they're always like trying to. Yeah, we talk a lot too with certain friends that I have, and we'll talk about social media. We'll talk about stuff like this, just sharing content, and that question of man, I can't seem to grow fast enough, and it's like man, well that's just that part of it. Are you sharing enough? Are you actually really putting yourself out there too? How's it going, Wiggly Line? Good morning. It's evening for me. Well, I'm glad you stopped by. We're holding a steady number of 22 people. It hasn't really changed, which is nice. It's kind of fluctuated a little bit in the beginning, but we seem to have found a slight audience, which is great. Yeah, Miss Jizu is really, really amazing. She doesn't really share as much online. I mean, she'll do a little bit of stuff educationally in Korea, but I think a lot of it has to do with that she feels a bit self-conscious about her English and communication skill. When she's, in like live situations, I think she's very, again, open and charming. She has very good responses of things, but it's a lot of work, and for any other artist, again, it's a lot of stress. Not only just stress, but it's actually just energy. It's draining for many other people, and I actually don't feel drained. Like this, honestly, the kind of stuff I can go on for hours and hours and hours and talk and talk and talk, because I do, when I teach classes and stuff like that. So I'm not ending because I feel like I need to move on now. I'm tired. I'm just ending because I'm done with the work. So, but for a lot of other people, it is very straining, and I kind of feel it's that way for her a little bit too. Um, so there'll be times where she's post stuff, where she doesn't post things, and whatever the case is. Yeah, definitely. Take advantage of that part where it's like it's a very small group and it's very nice, and where it's only like 20 people in here. You guys have full access to any questions or comments or things, even requests. Honestly, now I may not take all requests, but one request might lead into another. It might even relate to something I'm doing, and you never know. Maybe I'll actually do a little bit of educational side of stuff here. If you want to see something. we are coming down to a little bit here and there of indication of marks. We're getting close to the finish of this piece. I might come back and just kind of adjust just a couple of small things in the background. But in general, I don't have too much more to do. It's always good to recognize when you're overworking things, or if you feel like you're noodling. Those are a good time to stop. But I do feel there's a couple things in the back I would like to hit, but I don't want to just go overworking the thing in general. So I'll come back to it when I have fresh eyes again. Favorite artists, question. Right now, at the moment, who I really enjoy watching, especially art-wise, is Eliza Ivanova, artist who was at Pixar. And we got to know each other from Comic-Con a couple of years ago, and I would see her at all the shows, and we'd just sit and chat. And I really enjoy her work. I think her drawing skill is actually some of the best currently right now. Technically, we can argue that there's many other people that are potentially better, quote unquote. But again, on a technical level, maybe on things like perspective and camera and shots and stuff like that. But I find her work to be really, really sensitive in terms of storytelling and emotion. It just really catches me and locks me on. I just stare at her work sometimes for a while, and her originals are just amazing too. But she's also incredibly humble. And again, she's one of those people that just wasn't really looked at or spotlighted for a long time. Again, she was just an artist at Pixar and Studio, and she was just doing her own stuff. And only since 2000 and maybe 15, in the last 3 or 4 years, she's grown exponentially, and she's kind of went on her own now. She left Pixar, and she's more confident in what she's doing, and that people actually like what she's doing. So even an artist of her caliber had that mentality in the beginning, which is like, I don't know if people really like what I'm doing. I don't know if I should do this or that. And we had those kinds of talks. But yeah, her stuff is crazy amazing. We've done art trades, and I have one of her originals, and I always like to look at it because I put it in a frame and put it on my wall. But yeah, she's also an amazing person. She was pregnant at the time of Comic-Con last year. No, I'm sorry, it was a different show. But she had her baby by Comic-Con this year, and the baby was like literally months old, and she was still at the show, talking to people, drawing and stuff like that. I was like, man, amazing. Well, in terms of drawing speed-wise, the question of speed is always prevalent in my feeds, and the answer to that is that I am 100% familiar with the things I'm drawing from. Now you might ask, does that mean you've actually designed this thing before or drawn it before? Well, not necessarily, but I've drawn things like it very often. So I pull from those memories and experiences, and so that means I don't necessarily have to sit here thinking about what to do. I can just do it because I have a general understanding of the approach. So having made decisions beforehand in previous drawings, I can go about making those faster while I'm doing them now. So a lot of it is just because of the amount of drawing and mileage and observation I've done, from real life things to things that other artists have done before, or different brands. And so that speed comes in from that familiarity, where I don't have to sit and think about what these things are. Visual library, which is a big format of what my class and what I teach is building a confidence by using a large, massive visual library, which many artists will now tout and talk about more these days. But that was a part of our system, of our class back at the time when we were training at Art Center, was building a strong sense of the things of proportion and shape in the world and the culture and the stories of anything from even how things work and how things are history-wise built. And also the curiosity that you would build yourself to go out there and look for those answers is what kind of was built over the time. Practice is one thing, but if you just kind of beat your head against the wall, you'll never really break it. It's about being smart, working smart, and not just working hard. And if you are able to, you'll find ways of not just breaking past the wall, but maybe even like finding another way around it, or whether you go over the top or underneath or something like that. There's always another way to solve problems. And practicing is a trying a method of trying to solve a problem. But sometimes if you just kind of repeat the same mistakes over again, you don't really go anywhere. So working smart is a part of that. How do you work smart? Well, trial and error is a part of it. Looking at other people's methods, taking classes, um, seeing stuff like this helps a lot. Let me kind of move this around a little bit. I don't know if the lighting looks better on the screen. I just want to see what it looks like. Let me see a little bit closer. Anyways. All right, we're about there. Again, I do appreciate all of you guys stopping by real quickly to see what's going on for this first live stream on Twitch. And I will do it again next week on Thursday in the evening for the first one, second one. And we'll see if we alternate the time, if I need to adjust anything. I expect, maybe the same amount of people, less or so. And if I see some of you again, it'd be great. If I don't, I'll see you at some point in the future. But thank you again, guys, for feedback, because I really did need it in terms of how it felt in general. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Twitter, I don't really have one. I actually use my Instagram mostly, and the Instagram is just Peter Han Style, the same name as the channel over here. Yet it'll be Drawing with Peter Han, episode 2, essentially. So I'm just going to go through episodes, essentially, as each episode will encounter many different subjects or different materials and questions. And it's just much like a podcast in a way. If it's maybe specific to a focus of a topic, I might label it that way too. But that's the direction I'm going to go. Actually, in terms of that whole Drawing with Intention stream, if people are interested in something like that, again, I might label some of those in terms of episodes focusing on certain topics, and I may talk about them. It may not be necessarily like a class format, but I'll definitely discuss general thoughts behind them. So if, again, like I said, if you guys have any suggestions also, make comments in areas and be like, hey, talk about this or talk about that, and I'll kind of jot them down, and maybe we'll focus on some of the episodes where they're going to go, all right? Cool, thanks a lot, you guys. Appreciate that. We're going to end this here, and I will see you all the following session. Appreciate it.